Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 23rd day of August, 2021. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show once again. Up first, we've got on the, I believe, fire danger, the no fire danger graphic here. Nowhere qualifies for high fire danger anywhere in the state that I could find. Too wet and chilly around the interior as well as the coastal areas. So looking really good there. Probably the highest fire danger area would be the southern panhandle. We've had 2 or 3 days in the lower to mid 70s across that area, but it didn't even qualify as well. So moving on to the hazardous weather graphics, no watches, warnings, or advisories out anywhere in the state, including the Aleutians, Bering Sea, northern interior, Arctic coast, and panhandle for the next probably day or so. And looking good in that regard. Satellite imagery showing, massive clouds dropping southward, south-southeast across the Russian Far East into the northwest Bering Sea. And some of those clouds are spilling into the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, and Seward Peninsula, and also up, kind of linking up with an old frontal boundary there along the western Brooks Range along mountains there, and the western Arctic coast. And then massive moisture over the central interior, extending down to south central Alaska and the North Gulf Coast. Rain ending now mid-afternoon, even in northern Cook Inlet, and some clearing over Cook Inlet, actually from Anchorage on down toward Kodiak Island. Seeing a little bit of clearing in the clouds there with the showers tapering off and ending, but continuing along the North Gulf Coast. Pretty gusty winds with the front there. Middleton Island seeing wind gusts of 40 miles an hour out of the east, southeast during the day today, and 45 mile an hour northeast winds over Amatuli Island near the Barren Islands there in that marine area. And minimum gales going on in those areas with that front. That'll be ending shortly. And front really starting to weaken as it tries to push in toward the panhandle there. Clear skies once again today, mostly sunny conditions. Sunshine, light winds, temperatures upper 60s, mid to upper 60s, some cases lower 70s. One of the warmer locations I could find was Cake at 73 degrees, while Hoona had 72. I believe Shelter Cove might have been 75. It's farther down to the south there. Otherwise, kind of a glancing blow of a system there, catching the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, but really not much of an effect there. Areas of light rain, southwest interior. Rainfall amounts range from about Copper River Basin, say 1500s at Paxson, and then only 1/100 of an inch at Valdez in the last 12 hours there, with Fairbanks picking up about 1/10 of an inch there with the right in the center sort of the cloudy area, and Big Lake 1/4 of an inch, southern Susitna Valley in toward, that was 1/4 of an inch there. Nikolai in the Kuskokwim Valley had 3/4 of an inch of rain. That was one of the heavier amounts in the state today in that location. Otherwise, Anatuvik, clouds actually along the remnants of the old frontal boundary in the Brooks Range. There's shower activity brought 4/100 of an inch to Anatuvik. Otherwise, very light amounts up in that area, 1/100 of an inch to nothing at all. And on this chart, low pressure, keeping it kind of cloudy and showery with areas of light rain or showers over much of the southwest interior into the Kuskokwim Valley, and then kind of a general area of rain there in the central interior, areas of light rain, and also south central Alaska, although breaking out over Cook Inlet this afternoon, as I mentioned, with the main rain area shifting off to the east and northeast, and the front slowly moving eastward. The low well south of the Kenai Peninsula and east of Kodiak Island. So precipitation, it's actually seen some clearing there at Kodiak Island as well as the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, a lot of clouds, no storminess out in the Aleutians. Maybe some scattered shower activity possibly there in the eastern Aleutians, but looked like some Scattered clearing also for the west central Aleutians there, but a lot of clouds covering the Bering Sea, but winds are light and conditions basically dry all the way up to St. Lawrence Island. And the forecast for tonight, rain chances increase along with the clouds. First the clouds will increase, then the rain chances will increase shortly after along the coast, especially the north coast of the Panhandle. Staying dry over the inland areas, staying dry down to the south as well, but could be some moderate rain on the, say in the Yakutat area. Still a chance of rain, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. Kind of showery for Cook Inlet, Manassas to sit in the valley, Copper River Basin, and the interior along that trough axis. Otherwise, high pressure, light winds, low clouds, fog for the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Risk of some light rain, fog, and drizzle for the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, moving on to tomorrow. Arctic coast, light winds, low clouds and fog, maybe a chance of some sun, but a chance of rain for the eastern Arctic coast into the east central interior, all the way down showers, Copper River Basin, chance of rain, North Gulf Coast, and that washing out front is getting pushed inland by a couple of weak troughs back behind, and then developing system south-southeast of Kodiak, finally shoving that trough through the ridge high pressure, very weakening it, but look for occasional light rain, northern half of the Panhandle, southern half mainly over Prince of Wales Island, with just a risk over towards Stewart and Hyder, maybe just staying dry the entire day. Low pressure over the west central Bering Sea, or western Bering. Trough from that might bring some light rain, fog and drizzle into the western Aleutians, and then a system to the south might bring a little bit of rain, maybe, to Atka Island. Otherwise, light winds and basically dry conditions for the northern Bering Sea into the Bering Strait, through the Bering Strait, and the northwest coast looking pretty good again. Tomorrow, partly and mostly sunny with northeast winds 15 miles per hour. And then for Wednesday, swing those winds around southwest, especially in the afternoon, start to pick up a little bit, as well as the chances of rain start to increase as well for the northwest coast, Kivalina, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne area, and even possibly St. Lawrence Island. Winds will swing around to the west-southwest in the afternoon, but looks like any precipitation holding off until Wednesday evening, if then. But kind of a weak front dragging eastward across the interior brings areas of light rain, Kodiak Island, the Aleutian Range, Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Valley, up across south-central Alaska, all the way up across the eastern interior to the eastern Brooks Range, and it looks kind of cloudy and wet for the entire southeast coast. Lows tonight, upper 20s to lower 30s for the North Slope and Arctic coast, and in the 40s south of the Brooks Range to near 50 as you get even farther south toward Bethel, 51, 52 Kodiak, lower 50s for the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow in the 30s for the Arctic coast and North Slope. Highs in the lower to mid 30s, or mid to upper 30s, call it. South of the Brooks Range, mid to upper 50s to near 60 south central Alaska, Copper River Basin. A little cooler in the southern Panhandle, lower 60s for your highs near 60 Kodiak Island, and the lows on Wednesday morning, upper 20s to mid 30s for the North Slope and Arctic coast. Into the Kobuk Valley, Ambler, low 36 forecast, and just a shade below 50 in the Tanana Valley, and upper 40s for the southwest interior, near 50 Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, lower 50s for the Panhandle, followed by highs. Back that up in the lower to mid 60s, southern Alaska, 65 near Northway and Tok.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to the first line weather graphic for Tuesday morning. IFR, North Slope Arctic Coast, marginal VFR for the Noatak Valley and the northwest coast, on down to the Kobuk, Selawik Valley areas into the northern Koyukuk, but big area of IFR in the central interior and much of southern southwest Alaska, all of Bristol Bay, eastern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, Pribilofs just into the marginal VFR zone, and marginal VFR for the Aleutians, IFR Alaska Peninsula, marginal for Kodiak Island, Copper River Basin, marginal VFR, Gulf of Alaska, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, IFR right up to near the coastline of the southeast coast. And for the afternoon outlook, shaping up like this for the Panhandle. Looks like kind of a marginal VFR afternoon there, and IFR there is a marginal VFR southern Alaska, except that band pretty continuous there from the eastern upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country along and north of the Alaska Range to west of the Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Valley out to the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta coastline, Nunivak Island, Northern Bering Sea, IFR, southwestward to Kiska, Shimei, and Attu. But St. Lawrence Island, north to the Seward Peninsula, northwest coast, all VFR. Marginal VFR for the Pribilofs, and central eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, southern Cook Inlet area, Iliamna Lake, with some VFR showing up over the Copper River Basin to Nebezna, Northway, maybe Tok. And for the morning, Wednesday, lots of IFR in the interior with marginal VFR. A couple of zones of VFR there, Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, and over toward, I will say from the Copper Center area northeastward across eastern Alaska Range there to possibly as far north, right about to Eagle. Then you hit the marginal VFR. IFR, though, for the Panhandle, Gulf of Alaska, all the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, across the Kenai Peninsula, central Cook Inlet, southern Kodiak Island, and big swath of the Bering Sea out there to the western and central Aleutians, eastern Aleutians, mostly IFR as well. And for the afternoon Wednesday, areas of IFR kind of rule the Bering Sea northward to the Bering Strait with marginal VFR and a zone of VFR there for the Alaska Peninsula. East side of Kodiak Island, Fognak Island, or northeast Kodiak Island, breaking out to VFR in the afternoon. And improving along the northwest coast, but nothing better than marginal VFR into the Copper River Basin. Lincoln Glacier Bay marginal, but the southern rest of the Panhandle all the way down Dixon Entrance IFR. And for the passes, Anatuvik, IFR are trending toward marginal throughout the day. Same trend, probably lowest conditions, IFR, best chance early morning hours or during the morning hours for Adigan. Otherwise marginal. Lake Clark and Merrill, occasional marginal VFR throughout the day, especially in the morning hours. And rainy, same forecast, IFR, mainly early on. And for windy, marginal VFR. Isabel, IFR becoming marginal, and for Mentasta, keep it VFR there for that pass. And Tanita, marginal VFR becomes VFR for the afternoon. And Portage, though, looks like it'll be IFR at times throughout the entire day. Lake or Chilkoot and White starting out VFR, trending toward marginal with increasing southerly flow and moisture. Possibly could become IFR southern entrance during the latter part of the afternoon. And for the freezing levels, 2,000 to 4,000 feet there from the northwest coast up across eastern Brooks Range, and then kind of slack just 8,000 feet over the southern three-quarters of the state into the Panhandle, 6,000 feet over Kodiak Island. Icing could be some considerable moderate rime or mixed icing in those areas along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. Otherwise, kind of a widespread area of possible light to very isolated moderate rime or mixed icing, eastern interior, and out over the western Aleutians and in the southeast coast. Jet stream, a little bit of ridging there over the south and southern Bering Sea. So we've got 50, 70 knot winds coming over the top of that, northwest 45 Alaska Peninsula, and southwesterlies 50, 75 knots there in the northern interior, and looking at 9,000 feet. Pretty good wind-wise, really. 30 knots Alaska Peninsula, and southerlies 30 knots in the Panhandle. That's about it. 3,000 feet. Pretty good. Northeast 20 to 30 knots. St. Lawrence Island to the Bering Strait coast. Northwest 35. Western Aleutians. Turbulence. Light isolated, lighted, moderate chop. Alaska Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island through the Bering Strait to the northwest coast.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Hangar Flying. My name is Mary O'Connor, and I'm with the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation. This evening, I have with me Tom George, who is the Alaska representative of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. Hi, Tom.
Good evening, Mary. Pleasure to be with you.
Tom, we understand that there are some charting changes taking place for one of the well-known passes that's used by pilots in Alaska. Can you give us an overview of this pass and its location?
I'd be happy to. The route we're talking about is the route from Anchorage to McGrath across a section of the Alaska Range. And while if the weather in our aircraft is up to just getting up to altitude and going straight across, that's the most efficient way to do it. But if either weather or aircraft capability or the reason we're making the trip keeps us lower, we've got to find a route through the Alaska Range to make this flight. And I'd like to provide some definitions to help with this discussion. And I've not been able to find a true aviation mountain pass definition, but I did find this from World Landforms. Mountain pass is the highest portion of a path through the mountain range. The highest portion of the route is also the lowest route that can be traveled between mountains on either side. So we both have the pass giving us the high point, but it is part of a route to get us through a set of mountains or hills terrain. What the FAA provides is a mountain pass chart symbol that tells us where that high point is, but it doesn't tell us anything about the actual route itself.
Thank you for that definition and clarification of those terms. Now that we know exactly what we're talking about, can you show us the routes that we're going to be addressing?
So to zoom in on the central Alaska range a little bit more, the orange route that we're seeing here would take you through Rainy Pass, which is the higher route, and also through more precipitous terrain. So there is an alternate route through Ptarmigan Pass, and that's where we're going to see the changes to the names if people are looking to fly that route. And let me give you a little more background on the history of that. This is a document from the 1930s, 1934, that talked about flying through the Alaska range. And this is what they had to say about Rainy Pass. The backbone of the Alaska range is reached at Rainy Pass, which is of moderate elevation, very narrow with many sharp turns, and should never be flown on account of violent downdrafts and the fact that if cloudiness is encountered in the pass, it is impossible to turn around. They also went on to talk about the alternative route, known as Ptarmigan Pass, with a U shape to the south of the airway, 2 to 3 miles wide with no sharp turns so that it could be flown safely when ceilings are below the summit of the mountains and still be possible to turn airplanes around in the pass if necessary. So these are both very long passes of very long standing, and that advice about Rainy Pass probably was pretty good advice given the nature of the aircraft that they were flying in those days.
This historical perspective is fascinating, and it is interesting to know that these passes have been used and documented for a long time. So our beloved Ptarmigan Pass is the one that's being renamed and re-identified on the chart. Can you show us what these changes are going to look like on the charts and what pilots should expect to see?
I'd be happy to. The magic date is August the 12th, 2021. And before that time, the chart, as it's actually run today, still shows Rainy Pass as it always has, no change there. The location that historically was called Ptarmigan Pass has been changed to Hell's Gate by the FAA, since that's the actual official place name for that location. What's not on the chart at all is the actual mountain pass, the high point along the route, which is shown with the orange star here. So after August 12th, what we're going to see is Houston Pass, which is the proper USGS name of that location, depicted on the sectionals, on the McGrath sectional, and Hell's Gate will remain on the charts, but as a VFR checkpoint to allow pilots to have some reference as they're flying through that area.
This is very helpful. With a VFR checkpoint, pilots can also increase their situational awareness and use this point to communicate with other pilots. So both of these passes, Rainy and Houston, will get pilots through the Alaska range. How do these routes differ, and is there a reason why pilots might prefer to use one over the other?
Well, going back to look at the trace of these routes now on a Google Earth background so we can look at terrain rather than just topography. The orange route, again, is the route through Rainy Pass, and the actual elevation of Rainy Pass is 3,524 feet. This is not going to be, these elevations won't be on the charts originally, but before the end of the year, FAA is telling us that they're going to add the actual pass elevation not only to these, but many other passes in the state of Alaska. In contrast, Houston Pass, the elevation is 2749, and what was shown as Ptarmigan Pass, now Hell's Gate Canyon, is 2,200 feet approximately. So the difference between Rainey and Houston is 775 feet in terms of vertical elevation, another 550 feet difference between Hell's Gate Canyon and the Houston Pass. So knowing those values when you're flight planning and as you're starting to fly these routes is very useful information, so that if you're encountering ceilings before you get to the pass that aren't going to let you get through the pass, you've got an early indication that this might be a good time to turn around and exercise plan B. So yeah, I think in this case, we've got some new place names to become familiar with. And as you mentioned, not only is it useful for knowing about these in terms of our strategic tackling of these routes, but also we need to use these place names as we're making CTAF calls to reduce the risk of mid-air collision while we're flying in this confined terrain. So hopefully everybody will get their charts updated with this chart cycle, either paper or electronic, and use these new place names so that we're all singing off the same sheet of music as we're happily flying through either of these passes.
Tom, thank you so much for explaining these changes, and thank you for your work with the Mountain Pass Working Group. I appreciate your time being on Hangar Flying, and in addition, we'd like to thank the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association for allowing you to be here.
My pleasure.
Thanks also to Alaska Public Media for allowing us to bring you Hangar Flying, and thank you to the National Weather Service for sharing their time. Have a good evening, everyone.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at sea ice analysis for today. Still some areas of thin light ice along central eastern Arctic coast there. Otherwise, not a lot of change. Kind of a slight northward drift there to the heavier pack ice farther to the north, and really no big changes expected over the next 5 days, with ice fields is kind of shifting around with the prevailing winds and currents. Coastal water forecasts looking something like this. For the Panhandle, got a little of a lag there in the advancer. Anyway, south winds 15 knots for Tuesday for the south coast, increasing to 20 to 25 knots from the south and then southeast up on the north coast. Seas there as high as 8 feet, about 5 feet in the south coast. And inside waters, southeast winds 15 knots, few higher gusts, particularly around Stevens Passage, but seas at about 3 feet. Outlook for Wednesday, light variable winds inside waters of the Panhandle, 5 to 10 knots, predominantly southeast though for Clarence Strait, but seas pretty slight, 2 feet or less. And for the south coast, southeast winds 20 knots, 6 to 7 foot seas. North coast, southeast winds 10 to 15 knots with seas at 6 feet. Cook Inlet tomorrow, north winds 15 knots, 2 to 3 foot seas. Kamishak Bay, light variable winds at 10 knots with 3 foot seas. Barren Islands, down from today, northwest 15 tomorrow, seas 6 feet. And north of 20 knots for the western North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound looking at northeast winds at 20 with 4 foot seas. Small craft advisories, 30 knot winds from the southeast there for the eastern North Gulf Coast with seas at 8 feet. Outlook for Wednesday, light variable winds for the eastern North Gulf Coast around Middleton Island, and about the same for Prince William Sound with predominantly northeast or variable to northeast. Cook Inlet, southwest at 10, 3 foot seas. Kamishak Bay, southwest 15, west 15 knots for the Barren Islands. Kodiak Island, west winds 15 to 20 knots, seas up to 7 feet. Light variable winds at 10 knots that connect to Castle Cape, but the Alaska Peninsula looking at westerlies at 15 to 20 knots with 4 to 6 foot seas. Bristol Bay, southwest at 15. And on Wednesday, Bristol Bay, west winds at 10 knots, seas down to 2 feet. Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula north at 15, Pacific side southeast 15, and still light variable winds there from Sitkinak to Castle Cape. Shelikof Strait, light variable winds at 10 knots. East side of Kodiak, southwest winds 15 knots, seas 5 feet. Eastern Aleutians tomorrow, light variable winds really laid down pretty good there with seas 4 to 6 feet, winds no more than 10 knots. Light variable winds also for the Central Aleutians at 10 knots with 3 to 6 foot seas. From Amchitka to Shemya now too, west winds at 20, 5 to 6 foot seas. Small cloud advisories from Shemya to Kiska on Wednesday for north winds at 25 knots. Otherwise, Amchitka, north 15, north to northeast winds 15 knots, Adak and Atka. Fox Islands, north to northeast, 15 to 20 knots with seas running 3 to 5 feet. Southwest coast, north to northwest winds at 20 knots tomorrow, 4 to 5 foot seas. Light variable winds for the Pribilofs at 10 knots, and St. Matthew Island, call it northeast at 20. Small craft advisories for St. Lawrence Island, north winds at 25 knots. Outlook for Wednesday, St. Lawrence Island, west winds 20 knots. Small craft advisory, St. Matthew Island, 25 knots out of the west. Light variable winds for the Pribilofs, northwest 10 to 20 knots along the southwest coast. And for the eastern Boulevard Sea coast, looking at northeast 15 knots tomorrow, west at 10 for the central coast. North 15 on the west side. Small craft advisories from Cape Beaufort to Wales. Northerlies 25 to 30 knots, 6 to 10 foot seas. And for Wednesday, eastern Boulevard Sea coast, easterlies 15 to 20 knots, 3 to 4 foot seas. South winds at 20 on the western Arctic coast, and then small craft advisories from Cape Beaufort to Wales. South to southwest winds 25 knots, seas 5 to as high as 8 feet. And for tonight, chance of rain, western Brooks Range, the Long Mountains down across Kivalina, maybe Kotzebue, northern Seward Peninsula, but amounts to be very light. Another band of moisture and showers right along the Yukon River there, up into the flats, north of Eagle, and then along the Alaska Range, periods of rain for the North Gulf Coast, and increasing rain chances central and north coast of the Panhandle, trying to push in toward Lynn Canal. And for tomorrow, that front washes out, and look for a better chance of rain. Prince of Wales Island, periods of light rain up to the north, North Gulf Coast, eastern interior, central interior looks cloudy and damp, even Bristol Bay. And then for the day on Wednesday, weak front brings a chance of rain into the interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.